have titanium white, cad yellow light, we have transparent oxide red, or I believe in this Gamblin it's transparent, is it transparent earth red instead of oxide. This is a permanent alizarin, or actually just a alizarin crimson from Old Holland, and that's ultramarine blue. And today we have just a little mixture of stand oil, 1 part stand oil to about 4 parts odorless mineral spirits as our medium. Okay, the first thing we want to do is get rid of some of this white. Really like the idea of kind of pushing in a green, gray background. It's kind of a little bit of every color there. Let's see what that looks like. That's not too bad. I would just say I'm painting with watercolor here, and it looks just like watercolor. Makes a big mess on my floor. That's what I'm looking for. There we go. I forgot to mention, this is a big rosemary ivory. So this is it's a synthetic brush. And we're going to just do the same thing with her. So this would be, you really could consider this a kind of an imprimatura layer. We don't want a lot of paint on her. We really just want to cover up that white without losing our drawing. The drawings, you can see the drawings blending in there with that. It's kind of making a gray. Perfectly fine. And that's all a shadow. Just kind of. So again, I'm just getting rid of the white. I need to push that white out of here. So you can see the advantage of starting with the toned linen. You don't really have to do that, and you don't even have to do this. There's a lot of artists that I see that paint right on white, and it's kind of it can be kind of a cool effect. Not after proper values. That represents all of her hair that's there. And yeah, this layer dries really fast. When you put that much medium in it, it's not going to create too much of a problem for us here for laying the other layers. The other layers should just lay right on top of that. At least that's my hope. So I'm kind of putting one stroke down at a time, and keep mixing it. Keep plenty of paint here, but don't catch yourself just kind of licking the paint and spreading out. That's fine to do as long as you as long as you know you're doing that. It's like in these instances, I can take that brush and move that down into these areas and I'm just putting spots of paint, but I know I'm doing it. But we have this. I think we have this, most of us, kind of an unconscious knack for what I call dabbing, and it's not really dabbing's I guess that's dabbing. As long as it's conscious, as long as you're meaning to do that, it's perfectly fine. But I see a lot of people who paint and they're talking to their friend and they're not really paying attention to what they're doing, and they end up just kind of. I've also heard the word licking. You don't want to lick your paint to death. That doesn't mean with your tongue, but that just means you're taking that paint and spreading it out everywhere. So I would encourage you to just make a very conscious effort to pick up a piece of paint, as it were, like that. That's a, think of that as a piece of paint instead of a stroke maybe, and you're going to lay it down. You're going to lay that on there, and then you're going to come back for more paint. Lost our fingers there somewhere, but we're going to paint those back in. So what we lose in that drawing, that's perfectly fine. Really just want the essence. I really want that. I think I want that darker too. Some areas in here. Let's see. Let's get this. This is one of the darkest spots. Kind of love that brown. I wasn't expecting to have so much brown in there. I think that's going to be very charming. So with finding some of these initial marks, first of all, I'm not nervous if I have to come back in and modify them. So we're not going to spend a lot of time on them. Maybe you can even stay away from edges. Maybe, like that chin might be a good thing to stay away from until you feel a little more confident that this is the value and the temperature that you're after. I have a lot of mixed light here, and so I'm trying to decide maybe kind of an overall average. There's areas over in here that are going to be a lot greener. This area right under the neck is going to be a lot warmer. But for right now, I'm going to just try to group that into a general mid-tone shadow that leans maybe just a little bit to the warm. Slightly. I don't mind if there's maybe a little more green in that. So let's see. Mix up, find a little more green, just a little bit more. I want to make sure. Well, that's probably pretty good. As we come down into that armpit's going to be a little darker. So right now I don't have anything in the lights to compare. So maybe that's something I'll show you guys here real quick. We kind of start with, I think sometimes what I call a bookend approach. And we've established some of the darks in the painting, but what we haven't even touched upon are like how we know, you know, we're not talking about the highlights. I mean, the highlights are going to be, they're going to be not far off that. I don't want to put down pure white as a highlight, but you know, if you want to just see this as an example, I'll just scrape this off. You know, we're talking, that's one of the brightest highlights right there. So there's, you know, there's pure white, although it's not because it's transparent. So I have to lay it down really thick. So that would be kind of our brightest bright. And that doesn't even look that bright because it doesn't have anything that dark around it. So, you know, that's where we're heading with this. So we're not talking about the highlights. We're talking about the general light. So let's look at that. So we said that she's under a cool light, right? So let's mix up a big batch here. A little medium in there to kind of get that white going. It's rather stiff. So just dipping into that medium to kind of get it to flow a little bit. Not too much. All right, so now we're just going to add a little, let's see, let's just go a little, let's make it a little Caucasian flesh, and then we'll add a little blue to it. Just a little bit of blue. Let's see where that is. Lots of, mostly white there. Let's see. I think that leg's a good place to start. It's not too bad. We could use a little more red. So this is our warm red, and this is our cool red. So let's add a little more warm red to that. And so that's going to be nice, I think, in the kind of the local tone for the light part of the flesh. It might be a little on the warm side. We might want to cool it off. One minute I see something, it's warm, and then I look back up there and I say, no, that's cool, or it's cooler. And I have that indecision going on all the time. But as I get more information in down here on her figure, then I will be able to inform myself better. Right now I'm kind of out in left field. I don't have any of these darks in. Those seem really, that is very cool. Let's put in just a little more light blue, even a little bit of red. That's that hip. Yeah, so anyway, so I think some of our lights are going to be probably a little lighter than that, but not much. And then this leg's very bright. I did this in the drawing when I put this dark spot right here, and it instantly made it look like she has this mustache. Oh, it's awful. It's maybe it's a little dark, but it, you know, just like in the drawing, it'll fix itself somehow. Somehow we'll end up with a drawing where she doesn't look like she has a big mustache. But I wanted to talk a little bit about this. You know, there's a cool light source, but we also have a secondary light source, which is my north light windows. So I believe I lit this with an artificial light, probably a LED. That's the primary light source that's coming down from up above. But as quite often happens in my studio during the day when I'm working, we get this beautiful cast of blue that comes, and it's coming from this direction in, and I just was trying to represent that with these blue tones right here, and they're everywhere. They're even going to be in these shadows if I can get it right, but you really see it in here where her skin is lighter, And this representation somehow we have to get this feeling of the rib cage turning, and I haven't quite completely decided how we're going to do that. And this is the way too premature, but this is that super light skin kind of, this is actually the breast right here, but that light skin where the bra is, I think, always present there and keeps that skin really light. And that's this hip right here that also doesn't see much sun, but it's catching both light sources. It's catching the upper light source and the blue light source, so it's brighter in value. Still haven't represented that correctly yet. Not doing a very good job with those values right there. But we'll just keep struggling away till we get them. That's a little better right there. That's gonna get that feel of light, just catching that hip. It's one of my favorite parts of this entire piece. As usual, faces are never easy. So I've really, I'm trying to keep the glare off this for you guys. I've been trying different positions. It just gets so much glare. And I hope you guys can kind of see into that a little bit. You know, it might be one of those things where I just need to get away from it and then come back and work on it later. I think I've been looking at it too long. But I do know one of the things I'm really struggling with is that is a dual light. I knew that was going to be tricky, but it's this dual light source where that blue is really coming in there and it's competing with this light coming down from above where they blend together there. And I'm trying to determine what the proper value and temperature and kind of the general mixing of those two lights has been very, very difficult. And yeah, it might just be one of those things I need to come back to later once I've kind of decided what it needs. So I've probably spent way too long on this face. I need to get back and work some more of the figure. And actually that's not too bad right there. Just a little, that blue and a little blue there. And there's a little blue. This is an interesting little spot where it mixes. There's a little bit of, there's a little bit of light blue right there. And then that blends into, there's actually there's another light source, a secondary or a tertiary light source coming this direction. And wherever that's hitting, there's a warmth. So that's where I'm really putting in some warmer red colors. There's a little bit right there, but I have to be really careful because I really can't see into that. And I've gotten to the point where I've kind of softened this portrait out more than I want. The paint ended up getting, I'd like the paint to be a little thicker, but I've worked it to the point where it's kind of lost a little bit of that. And part of it has to do with this little brush. I ended up kind of just panicked and went for it. But I mean, I guess we could just keep working on that. We could actually, it's never too late. Let's see what we can do here. Let's bring one of these big brushes back in. And if we mess it up, well, we'll just do it again, right? Get a little more paint going on there. I really, a little sad when I lost the thick strokes I had on her nose. Let's see if we can get some thick paint back on there again. I don't know if that's going to work or not. That's a pretty big brush. That is the idea. Big brush, small area. That's interesting. Now, okay, let's go back to this brush one more time with a little thicker paint. Let's see if we can just lay on a thick stroke right there and leave it alone. Now there's always just you know, you just kind of have to keep coming back in. There really isn't hardly any change between the side plane of that nose and the top plane, so I'm going to kind of blend that down just a little bit. And now see if we can come back in and put a little highlight. It might be too wet to do that. Might have to come back when it's dry. That left the paint there, and it's just a little clumpy though. We might be able to get away with that. A little structure I still want to work with right there. I really want to show that this is that side plane of the nose, but boy, I'll tell you, you know, these little faces, you move something just a fraction of a millimeter or you get the wrong brush stroke on there and it really can throw you off. But really the secret is you just keep pushing things around until you get it. And sometimes that can take a long time. So that's so that kind of changed the shape there a little bit. That's not quite her nose. That's better. And you know, I'm trying not to draw around the form. I don't want to draw. The shadow actually comes from a little higher. Let's see what that does. You know, a lot of times when I'm doing this, I can see in the reference what it's doing, but doesn't mean I can do the same thing. So I kind of throw something in with the idea of what if. You know, what if, like, for example, if I brought that shadow up a little higher, would that help define that nose just a little bit better? And then step back and look at it, and actually I think it might. It's a really strong, hard line. So we can kind of, the line bends a little bit, and then there's a little bit of a softness at the bottom. So that's a tricky thing to do. I don't want to ruin the lips because I kind of like the lips. So maybe we can just kind of do that a little bit. There, you know, it's actually looks like I've messed up that chin a little bit. So there's a lot of reflected light coming up underneath that. It's very orange. But let's see, I want to make sure we don't lose three-dimensionality in there. There can't be too much light in there. It's a really hard line. Oh, I know why. Because that warmth, it's a little darker, but that warmth is on her chin too. So that was too much contrast. So I just want to put a little bit of that warmth into the bottom of her chin. And then that's where it gets dark, is back in here on her jaw. Let's see, let's keep that. See if we can, let's see if we can just get that with one stroke. And then the hair, let's see, let's try a different brush for the hair. There we go, just keep that nice and dark. That line got a little mechanical. See how that looks. And then I think that is very, very close. Little tiny things to change. I can see that's still a little on the dark side. There for some reason there is this really heavy shadow right there. I'm wondering if we could just run a little bit of a brush with no pigment over the top of that. It's a cast shadow. There's kind of a cast shadow coming down from the eyebrow. That's better, I think. It just was kind of catching my eye. Let's go with that for now, and let's go see if we can work on the figure just a little bit more before I go crazy. Oh, one more thing. There still needs to be, there's still just a little bit of darkness right there where the nostril is. Kind of represents the nostril. Just a little bit. That's better. Well, I really need to get back out and work the rest of this figure. I'm afraid I spent too long on the face. I'm happy with the face. But what concerns me at this point is that I've worked too much on it and it's not the right value. Because in this piece, the majority of the light isn't hitting the face, it's hitting the figure. The face is kind of it's in a half shadow, except for maybe the forehead. And I'm afraid as I picked away at that face, I also lost some of the nice, I think a little bit of freshness that I wanted in there. Always a possibility to come back in and do more later, so that's okay. But that kind of does knock it out of I guess an alla prima piece if we have to work on this later. But I don't know, let's see. We get back in here and kind of relax a little bit. I think, boy, you know, working on a face can be very stressful. It's stressful. You know, if as artists we're bold enough to decide we're going to work on faces and figures, I think you guys all know that you know, that pressure, that it, you know, doesn't have to look like the sitter, but it does have to look human. And I think that face was particularly difficult because of that mixed light. I think that really took its toll with what I was trying to do on such a small face. So let's just see if I can get back here, and in the time we have left, let's see if we can kind of get some freshness back into this and really work these values, see where we are with all these values, and then they'll kind of redecide what that face might need. So let's see how fast we can move here. I'm going to try not to think. I'm going to think, when working a face is just definitely about thinking. And now we can just kind of maybe go a little bit on autopilot and see if we can get into like maybe a little bit of an art zone. So just moving around this kind of quickly without really thinking too much about what I have there. I'm really just translating as quickly as I can what I see in the photograph without overthinking it. And I'm comparing, so like right there, using an example. I'm constantly thinking, well, what value is it compared to what it's next to? So right there is really tricky. There's almost the same value there. And then, is it warmer or cooler? And this is a pretty tricky painting, just because there is so much light bouncing around there. We really kind of have so many different light sources. If you're counting a light source as reflected light. Let's see, and then I gotta back in there and repair that. there's some background work I need to do where you come back in and we'll kind of paint back into things a little bit. But I like those original colors I had on that. And then there's always a certain amount of softening, you know, what edges to keep hard, what edges to keep soft. So I haven't really quite got to that point yet. I'm still trying to get information everywhere, but it's starting to come down to that a little bit. I am starting to think a little bit more about where I want some of my softer lines, and then I had to switch out too. I had to bring in this flat brush. I just felt like it was getting a little too, well, I'm not sure what the word is. I just felt like I needed a little different brush shape. So I thought this little flat brush might work there, and I think it did. So we'll put that highlight back in. So I'm still not, you know, I still got stuff going on here, and this is a very interesting area to work on. Let's see, this still has to, that breast still has to go over a little bit. So you see, and I go back in, and I just move something. I tweak something over, I squint it down. There can't really be an edge there. And this is going to be, this area right here is going to take a lot of time, because that's, let's see, that's well, let's see, right? This is shoulder right here, poking through all that hair. So I'm hoping to paint the hair and the shoulder kind of at the same time. So we're just around and around we go. We just, you know, there is, like, example, here's some warmth that I didn't see earlier. That's bouncing, all this light's bouncing around that rib cage. Let's, a little cooler red in there, I think. If that gets too hot, that'll look a little strange and all that cool. See what that looks like. And then that has to come back dark again with some blue. But you can kind of see how I'm separating. Like, this area right here is so much cooler behind than that hand is. That hand's very warm. There's still a little light on it, but you could almost completely get away with not modeling that hand at all, really, because it already reads as a hand. I think it does anyway. So there's little edges like down in there, a little softness here and there. So as I get into, as I start seeing some of this come together, it does make me wonder about the face. The face is nice, but now it doesn't really fit. So see, it just needs some of this boldness. Maybe this would be a good brush. Maybe we could come in here and just work on that, and just chunk it up a little bit again, and put some bolder. It just needs to be a little bolder. So bigger brush, and just put some strokes in there, and let's see what that does. Maybe that'll help us a little bit.